I couldn't be happier to be joined by two of my favorite people, Richard Stratton and Richard Hoffman, both of whom you've met before, both of whom very different expertise, both of whom very different perspectives on life. The one thing they both have in common, they're both incredibly intelligent. So I thought, why not take this opportunity this Memorial Day to get their take on some of the hottest issues that are happening in the news today. Richards,
Frank,
thanks for joining us.
Very welcome.
Frank, good to be here.
All right, so the 2020 presidential election is heating up. Obviously, it doesn't seem to be much of a competitive primary on the Republican end, but the Democratic contest, at least according to the number of candidates involved, could not be more competitive. Let me ask each of you, one, who do you think the favorite is? If you had to pick a winner and predict a winner, who would it be? And two, what issues do you think are really motivating the average Democratic primary voter? Richard, tell us what the enemy thinks.
I think if I had to pick today, I would say Biden.
As the favorite.
Biden is the favorite. And what I think the biggest motivation I see of Democratic voters is getting Trump out of the White House. And I think the electability argument for Biden is like his strongest suit. And I think that's why it's coming through in his polling, being the leader of the pack at the moment.
Rich, what do you think? Who do you think, if you had to predict a nominee at this point, who would it be? And even if you're not ready to predict, what do you think is the issue that drives a Democratic primary voter today?
Well, unfortunately, the Democratic Party is in chaos right now, as far as I can see.
All the parties are in chaos.
Well,
by
all
the
the
way.
parties are, but at least the Republicans have Trump. So, but the Democrats are like all over the place. But if I had to pick right now somebody that I would get myself behind, to be Kamala Harris.
Well, so that's who, and I want to ask you about that because having been a prisoner of the war on drugs, it's interesting to me that you would pick someone that has locked so many people up as a prosecutor. So I want to ask you about that. But not who you'd necessarily prefer, because my two preferred candidates on the Democratic side are the two least likely to win. But if you had to predict, do you share Rich Hoffman's view that it's Joe Biden's to lose at this point?
Probably, yes. Yeah. I mean, look, a lot can change between now and then. You know, the way these things shake out over the last few months. But Biden looks like the front runner. I mean, he looks like the guy that you're going to get behind.
If his numbers stay where they are and the field stays as large as it is, no one's going to beat him, because there's so many candidates that are going to divide up the non-Biden vote that
but
he'll win it in a plurality.
Let me come back to your argument about electability, Richard Hoffman. You say Biden has the electability card to play. He's run for president twice before. He's done abysmally both times. And really, yes, he did get elected vice president twice, but he did that by being Barack Obama's running mate. Do you think maybe there's a chance that Joe Biden's electability is sort of a myth? Maybe he's got a glass jaw?
Oh, I think it is a myth, but I don't think we're going to find that out until he loses the general election to Trump.
He's going to face some pretty stiff competition in those primaries. I'll tell you, you look at Mayor Pete, you look at Bernie Sanders, you look at Cory Booker, they don't seem to be giving him an inch.
You know, I think the women are going to control this thing. I really have a lot of faith in these women. Women of color are really a powerful force in this country right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they took it over at some point.
So you talk about Kamala Harris. For people that don't know, for people that haven't seen Richard Stratton and his story before, you have to pick up these incredible books now out in paperback. One is called Smuggler's Blues. It's all about his time trying to evade arrest and be on the lam, and then when he was a marijuana smuggler. And then the other book, the sequel to it, Kingpin, is an absolutely compelling tale about his time in federal prison and how he got himself out through the power of words and through a lot of hard work and an incredible strength of will. But you are the last person that I would say was going to pick as their preferred candidate someone that spent so many years locking someone up.
Well, but I think that gives her a real insight into the process. You know, I mean, better someone who knows how it works than someone who doesn't. So, look, I like her presentation. I like her ideas. I like her thoughts. I think the Democrats are a really screwed up bunch of people. I have to say that. They just don't know what they're doing half the time.
And you sort of identify as a libertarian, right?
Libertarian,
you're very critical of the
yeah.
president, but you know that's probably.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably more of a Republican than I am of a Democrat in that I don't believe in a really super powerful federal government. I think this is a country made up of 50 states. You know, that we should, the states' rights idea is very powerful in my mind. So
You're exactly, by the way, who William Weld is counting on to propel him to victory in the Republican primary. However, I don't think there are enough of you left in the Republican primary to make a difference for Governor Weld. But let me ask you both, you're talking about women's issues, Richard. We're seeing the renewed debate over abortion going on all over the country. States like New York and Virginia have liberalized their abortion laws to an extent that have really upset a lot of people. States like Alabama and Georgia have instituted all sorts of new restrictions and prohibitions on abortion, which have really fired up the folks that we saw in these rallies taking place a week ago. Now, polling suggests that the vast majority of, not the vast majority, but at least a majority of Americans don't support these new abortion restrictions. From a political strategist's point of view, Richard Stratton, do you think this abortion issue is a winner for the Republicans or the losers?
That's a big question.
Or the Democrats?
I really don't know. I mean, that's a really tough question. Look, abortion, drug use, same-sex marriage, all of these issues are issues that the government should not be involved in the first place. These are issues that should be made up by the people who have to make those choices. You know, what am I going to get high tonight, or am I going to drink booze tonight? Can I have a date with another man? Or, you know, this is personal stuff. This is the United States of America. The government's not supposed to be involved in those things.
Richard Hoffman, longtime Republican strategist, former congressional staffer. Irrespective of the substance, which Richard got into there, and I'd be hard-pressed to disagree with most of what he said, tell me about the politics of it. How do you think the politics of this abortion issue play out going into 2020?
Well, that poll you cited, I could cite you other polls where, on the abortion issue, a lot of times it depends upon how the question is asked. If you ask about things like these restrictions, they tend to show opposition throughout the country. But if you poll the country and ask, are you pro-life or are you pro-choice, those polls tend to come out fairly evenly these days. So it really determines how the pollster asks the question for that data. As far as politically, the GOP needs the pro-life cause as a unifier in the party, and it drives a lot of activism. For the GOP, I think, say the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, it would be a situation of the dog that caught the car. Mm-hmm. And now it doesn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Has happened.
That's interesting.
That's a good one.
That is
the dog
very
that
true.
caught the car.
It's very true. All right, why don't we end with, since we're talking about wars of years past and Memorial Day, a discussion of the trade war where we are with China. Richard Hoffman, you've studied economics for a long time. You worked in the world of finance. Richard Stratton, you actually took part in a lot of international trade. Unfortunately, it was all illegal at the time. Give me your take, each of you, with respect to where we are with this trade war, our relationship with China in general. How do you think it ends up, and how do you think the president has handled this? China, of course, now saying that the trade talks can't continue unless America addresses its, quote, wrong actions. Richard Stratton, let me begin with you.
Well, look, you know, I think that the whole thing with Trump is that he seems to be creating these situations that are so critical and so divisive that that's how he's controlling, I think, his majority right now. And how it's going to play out, I don't think anybody knows. I really don't. I think he could be bringing us down the road into chaos as far as the trade war is concerned.
But so what are we supposed to do, Richard Hoffman? Just let China continue to rip us off?
No, this is...
Pay kids, 6-year-olds, 8 cents an hour?
This is necessary chaos. China has been taking advantage of the United States economically for decades, and presidents and Congresses have just turned a blind eye to it.
And it's interesting that the one president trying to do something about China putting Muslims in concentration camps right now happens to be a person that so many view as anti-Muslim.